Mr. Edit Man presents. I traded seats with a guy on a 7-hour flight so I could sit next to my girlfriend. He ended up sitting next to the two most annoying children on the whole plane. What malarkey situations have you unintentionally plunged someone else into? My freshman year of college, my best friend and I requested to live together. Well, housing messed up and put us in 2 separate rooms with 2 other roommates. We talked to one of the guys and he agreed to switch rooms with me. What I could not have known was my original roommate was a 300-pound tuba player who didn't shower. I felt bad for the guy who switched with me, but there was nothing I could do about it. I went to a Chinese restaurant on Haight Street a few years ago. My friends and I had eyes bigger than our stomachs. We left the place with a huge bag of leftovers. On the way home we saw a lady in a wheelchair begging for change near the freeway on-ramp. We decided quickly that she needed the food more than us. We gave her the entire bag of food. She seemed genuinely thankful for the food and thanked us profusely. That night we all got explosive diarrhea. As much as that sucked, all I could imagine was some poor old lady in a wheelchair scrambling to find a bathroom. My grandfather was set to be deployed in San Francisco during WW2. A buddy of his had a deployment in France. His friend had a fiancée and family in San Francisco and begged my grandfather to trade deployments with him. My grandfather did not have much going on in his life and did not really care where he got sent, so he agreed. He wound up in France, where all the action was essentially long over, and the troops just relaxed and enjoyed an extended vacation near Paris. He later found out that San Francisco was simply a staging point where they sent troops to prepare for the front lines and heavy-duty combat. Whoops. Asked my friend to drive me to a place a while away since I had no car. A 15-minute trip on the expressway ended up lasting 3 hours in traffic, and he got slightly rear-ended by 2 different people. Similar situation. Had a friend pick me up from the airport. Turns out he was the one person I knew who did not know where the airport was and was lost for 2 hours. I was working at a gas station and asked one of my co-workers to cover 2 shifts for me while I went on a short vacation. On the second day, he got robbed at knife point, got a cut on his face and another on his arm. They weren't not bad, but they needed stitches. He quit soon after, as he was too scared to return to work. Oh yes, I felt very bad about it. He was not even supposed to be there that day. It was about 10 years ago. My family allowed me to bring 2 friends with me to Tennessee to go skiing, and one day we went to this place where you could rent inner tubes and slide down the side of some mountain slope. So we get to the point where you're handed a tube. I got this super malarkey tube and I just so luckily placed my hand over where it was torn so I could feel the air rushing out. I quickly traded it for another and this girl behind me got the broken tube. Anyway, I go down the slope and get to the bottom and I look up to see the girl with the broken tube just stuck in the middle of the slope as some 200-pound man just slams into her, knocking her about 15 feet in the air, leading to her ultimately just rolling down the slope without a tube, crying hysterically. This one's not about me, but an old family friend who used to be a New York City firefighter. September 11th, 2001 was the date of the New York City mayoral primary, and the firefighters union was looking for volunteers to canvass for their endorsed Democratic candidate, Alan Havisi, who, as an aside, eventually went to jail for corruption. My family friend decided that it'd be better to be on a street corner handing out flyers / holding signs / whatever on a beautiful September Tuesday than in his Chinatown Manhattan firehouse. So he switched shifts with another guy in the house. That guy did not make it home. The family friend was driving him from his home in Westchester to start his canvassing shift at about 10 a.m. when he heard the news and immediately went to the hazmat station in Queens to get his gear. By the time he made it to the site, both towers had fallen. This was really his own fault, but here goes. I had a friend who worked at a furniture store and would get an employee discount of 50%. I was moving and needed a couch, so he offered to buy it using his discount. He asked for my credit card, which I provided, then proceeded to buy the furniture at a discount with my card. His manager asks why it's being run on my card and fires my friend. I did think it was weird that he asked for my card, thinking it would be cleaner if I just paid him back. But since he was the one that asked for it, I figured either the policy was okay with that, or that the name on the CC would not blatantly be right there, and that he would know better. Oops. This happens occasionally when the person in front of me at the checkout says, "Oh, you only have one thing. Go ahead." And then of course, the machine malfunctions, or the cashier inputs the wrong code and has to wait until the manager can come and override it. I always get so embarrassed. I was coming back from a trip to Japan with a few friends. I had bought a wooden sword from a little gift shop inside Yasukuni Shrine. At the time I thought it would fit inside my luggage to take home. Turns out it did not, so I asked a friend if he could put in his suitcase. He said sure. Flash forward to when we make it back to immigration at SFO. Out of the 15 of us, he is the one guy who gets pulled aside for a random security screening. He was gone an extra hour because of that wooden sword, though we did feel worse for the attractive Japanese girl who was also picked for a security screening, as those agents just had a field day with her panties. My Anglican father once told me a funny story about the time he and his brothers went to a Pentecostal church, and while the people were rolling around on the floor speaking in tongues, they noticed the most beautiful girl in their class among them. She was rolling around and crying out and not wearing any underwear, and they all had a good show and a good laugh. Decades later, at a house party, we were all sharing stories and laughing, and I told Dad he should tell his story about the Pentecostal girl rolling around with no underwear on, and Dad turned white as a ghost. She herself was not there, but her husband was, as were several other of my father's friends who happened to be Pentecostal. My roommate and I were flying to Germany on buddy passes, and his priority level was way higher than mine. I was booted off the flight if he went, so he sacrificed himself and got the next flight that was a city over so I could get on this one. So his plane turned out to be an hour late. Then they couldn't take off because they have something wrong with an engine. So they sat on the runway for 4 hours. Then by the time they found a new plane, the pilots had been on the clock for too long. So they had to wait 2 hours for new pilots. Then the next plane had computer problems that took 2 hours to fix. Then he finally landed in Germany, but since it was the next town over he had to take a train to the city we were staying in, Frankfurt, and his train was 2 hours late from electrical issues. I was working at a photography studio and traded appointments with another photographer. He ended up with 2 screaming 3 and 4-year-old girls who cried for an hour while their mother and grandmother tried to force them to cooperate. It was 8 AM. I once sent a pizza delivery to a hotel that was out of our delivery radius, but not by much, but had a reputation for serving clients that generally tipped well. When the woman placed the order, she said, "And hey, send your cutest driver, hee." And I joked that I would make sure to oblige. One of our drivers, Dan we'll call him, was having a rough night. Deliveries to bad neighborhoods, getting stiffed repeatedly, had some personal problems going on at home. So I figured he could take a long run, enjoy a smoke break, get a fat tip, and hopefully meet a cute girl. Anything to help brighten his mood. On his way out the door, I pulled him aside and said, "Hey Dan, do not worry about how long this one takes. Just let me know how it goes." So he disappears into the night and I return to my duties. Then an hour later he's not back. 90 minutes later, and I start to worry, did I just send a man to his death? Had he been mugged? Why wouldn't he answer his cell phone? Much to my relief, he came striding in less than 15 minutes later. He made a beeline for me, pinned me up against the nearest wall, and said with barely contained rage that was a dude. It turns out that the customer was a pre-op transsexual who had a very convincing voice over the phone that had called half a dozen pizza places looking for any way she could to score some action. Turns out that 4 of them showed up within a handful of minutes of each other, were all subject to the same proposition, and then had to go through the uncomfortable business of getting paid for the food. Unsurprisingly, Dan, who was already having a rough night, did not find this story as hilarious as the rest of our staff did, and thought maybe it played an elaborate prank on him just to duck with him. To be clear, I could not have dreamed such a devious, dysfunctional prank in a million billion years. Me, my husband and a couple friends went to an amusement park a few years back. We were waiting in line for a roller coaster, and there was enough room at the end of one of the rides for my husband and I to get on, but not our friends too. So we let the couple in line behind all of us go ahead, so we could all go together on the next one. We waited a really long time for the next ride. Then the attendant told us there was a problem and the ride would be shut down for a while. We left the line to go elsewhere and saw way up at the top of one of the big hills, the coaster was stuck. I felt bad for getting that couple stuck on what should have been our ride, but I was glad it was not us. They ended up having to walk down the tracks to get off, and I kind of have this thing about heights. I used to be an IT intern, and we would have to share weekend shifts in the data center. There would be one person there for 12 hours basically all alone with nothing to do. I switched shifts with one of the other interns so I could do something that weekend. Well, that day there was a huge storm and they lost power. He had problems with the backup generator, and after the ups ran out the building lost power. I'm not exactly sure how he messed that one up, but the bosses were not happy and he did not last long after that. When I was younger, I noticed my brother chatting with someone online. Later I brought it up in front of my mom. Malarkey went down. I felt so guilty, especially because I secretly knew he'd get in trouble. But damn, that was a malarkey storm if I ever saw one. A man and I were waiting for the same bus to get home. He asks me if I know when the bus will arrive, and I tell him, though the bus seemed to be running a few minutes late. The bus we were looking for is barreling down the highway as a different bus is pulling into the transit center. I say, hey, there it is. As our bus approaches, I board, take my seat, and notice that the man was not on the same bus as me. He boarded the other bus that had pulled in. If you are reading this, you made it until the end of the video. Click the thumbs up button since you made it until the end. On screen there should be some more videos similar to this. So either go do something else or watch another video. That's it. There is no more here. What are you waiting for, a secret message or something? Okay. This is not a secret, but subscribe for more edit videos like this.